So out of all the tracks I've mixed, the biggest issue I see, the number one issue, is people using bad kick samples that mess up the whole mix. So take a kick sample like this. So you might think the tone of this kick sounds okay, but what you gotta remember is these lines represent your speaker cones physically moving in and out. So when you get to a really loud part of the kick, they're vibrating a lot more intensely. So the fact that this kick has the loudest parts after the initial punch means that every time this kick plays, you're gonna hear a whoosh. And actually, if I play that same kick at 25% of the speed, you can hear the whoosh there. So I wanna talk about 4 options you really have to take a kick from looking like this to then looking like this. So that small difference right there actually can take your mix from sounding muddy and messy in the low end to sounding really clean and punchy. So the first way to fix a bad kick is gonna be EQ, but I think it helps to look at it like this. So I'm gonna take this bandpass filter on this kick and sweep it around the frequency spectrum. And while I'm doing that, look at this oscilloscope to see how it reacts. So the lower the frequencies, the longer the cycle. So these lower frequencies are what makes up the tail of the kick. So as you go up the frequency spectrum here, even by the time you get to 100 hertz, you're really getting the punch of the kick. And what's interesting is from like 100, maybe to 250 hertz, that really makes up the bulk of the punch of the kick. That's really the punch right there. And then once you go above that, everything else is just making up the tone and attack. So everything above 300 hertz, it's important for the tone of the kick, but it's not really important for your mix because it's not really making anything muddy. What's actually making the mix muddy are the sub-frequencies are by far the biggest culprit. And then the punch is also important and how that interacts with your bass too. And if I play the full kick again, we kind of know now that this area that's sticking out is because of somewhere around here in the frequency spectrum. Like if I try to turn this area down now, let's see what happens. You can see it actually kind of gets rid of those frequencies that were too loud. And now you can see there's kind of a dip here. Let's see if we can fix that by adding a little punch above it. So let's see. So just those 2 simple EQ changes, take the kick from this to this. But sometimes EQ can't save a bad kick. Like sometimes doing this process actually brings out the worst parts of the kick. And even though the shape gets better, the tone gets worse. So the second option we have to fix this kick is actually clipping. And I like to use Pro L2 as a clipper. So I have this in unity gain mode. So as I turn the gain up, it doesn't actually get louder. It just clips off the part of the kick that was too loud. Look at the kick before and then look at it after. The only thing with this is if the look ahead time is too fast, you start to get some distortion. So you gotta make sure to round it off a little bit. So then the third option we have is just to straight up replace the low end of the kick. So it's actually really easy in Serum to make the perfect low end for a kick. You just need a sine wave and you need to modulate the pitch so it moves down in pitch every time this sine wave plays. We just gotta change the shape of this LFO a little bit. We obviously want it to be deeper than that. And then we gotta shape it with the envelope a little bit here. So I'm gonna move this down. I'm gonna make it shaped like the low end of a kick. We'll give it a little release. So I know that doesn't sound like much, but if we look at that on an oscilloscope, it's literally like the perfect low end shape for a kick. So if we take the high pass version of our original kick, but then add in that new low end, the low end is a lot punchier than the original kick had. So if we look at the original kick, and then we look at the one with the replaced low end, this one has a lot more punch in the beginning, a lot more energy right at the beginning of the kick. It's not gonna have that whooshing effect. So for the fourth option, I wanna show you an example from one of my own tracks that I was mixing. So when I was mixing this track, I was trying to push up the master and it just kept distorting and I couldn't figure out why it was distorting because the balance of the mix sounded pretty good to me. And then I realized it was all because of the kick. The kick sample I was using originally looked like this. And you'd think that's like a really clean, punchy looking kick sample. Like, why is that causing distortion in my mix? So I tested out a ton of kick samples and landed on this one that sounded nice but wasn't causing any distortion. And I'm like, why does this sound, this kick, not cause distortion, but the other one does? And it's literally the tiniest difference. If we draw lines around the loudest parts of the original kick, it looks like this. And for the other kick, it looks like this. The punch is just happening a little earlier in the second kick, and it's not getting that tiny whoosh effect that was affecting the low end. And like, I was just surprised by how this small of a difference in the kick actually was distorting the whole master and messing up the whole mix. So the fourth option you always have is to replace the kick. And like, my advice for that would be just test out like 100 different kicks, like drag a bunch of kicks in a sampler and go through your track and just switch them on and off as you're playing your track and find what's working and what's not. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful to some of you guys. I have a totally free mastering course at bigzcourses.com/mastering if you want to check it out. And I'll catch you next time. Peace.